Hello guys, welcome to new video. In this video I wanna talk about Dart in server. Actually, this has some part. This video is part 1, and I'm trying to create a full stack application with Dart. That means we wanna create front end with Flutter and backend with, in this video I will show you, with Dart Frog package. And actually we are using Dart language in backend and frontend. It has some advantage that I will mention that in this video and in this playlist I want to use Dart Frog framework to handling backend side. I was using Dart Frog for my Dart full course and Flutter full course. You can check out these videos, and actually you can see the source code in my GitHub repo. Okay, and here if I click get started, you will see we have some documentation in here, and in overview Dart Frog is built on Shelf. Shelf is another package. It's for handling web server. That means it's for backend for Dart, but Dart Frog has some features that help us to create our APIs very better. Alright, in here you can see if I want to use Dart Frog, I can activate by this command. Dart Frog has a CLI that help us to add our routes, middleware, and etc. Alright. Okay, for installing Dart Frog CLI, we need terminal. In here, I'm in terminal. Let's add some, how I can increase my font. Yeah, it's good for now. And let's go to my project. I have my project folder, and in here, I want to copy this command and bring it in here. I install Dart Frog CLI before you can install it. It's very easy. And after that, when you install your CLI, you can easily create your project. You can see Dart Frog, create your project. Let's create a simple project. In here, for example, I want to create Dart Frog. Create, I called test. This is for testing now because I will show you how I want to create a full stack application. Test Dart Frog server. This is my project name, and it's creating my server. It's creating my project. All right. I open my Dart server later. All right. And let's pick this big font. Yeah. In here, we are in our project. That's Dart Frog CLI. Help us to create that. And you will see for default, I have a route. This is test. Let's remove this. We actually didn't use test for now, but we wanna add test in future. But for now, let's delete it. And in here, you can see we have a PubSpec YAML because we have a Dart application actually, and we have a dependencies Dart Frog. And in my index, this is routes. Actually, when we have a Dart Frog, everything it's happening in our routes. And let's run my terminal. In here, in my project, if I run Dart Frog dev, that means start my application, you see Flutter code. For example, if you wanna run your project, you can run it in your simulator, or in terminal you can use Flutter run, and your application will be run. But in here we use Dart frog CLI and Dart frog dev. That means I want to create my project. I want to run my project in develop mode. That means it's not production. It's for testing. All right. In future, when we want to deploy our server, we use Dart frog build to build production of Dart frog application. But in here we have a dev. And after that, it's very simply running on localhost. What's that means? Let's go to this route, localhost, and 8080, and you can see, welcome to Dart frog. Very nice. And why? Because in here, everything in Dart frog start from routes. When I'm calling my domain or my IP, for example, in here, we are in localhost 8080. This is our beginning and first and root of our project. We have index.dart, and in here, we have a routes. Index.dart on request, it gives us welcome to Dart frog. I can change this text. This is this is index.dart. Hi. And after I save my code, we don't need to run again this command, because in your development mode, when you are running your server, we have hot reload. You can see hot reload is enabled, and when I save this file, for example, you can see application is reloaded, and I need only refresh again, and you can see in here I have my text. All right, let's add another routes and test request and response. You can see in here each route has an onRequest function, and we have a context, it's request context, and after doing something, we return a response. In here, we have HTTP protocol, and we have some request, and when we send a request, for example, if I refresh again, I am sending a request, and I get my response. All right, let's create another route in new file. For example, I called new route.dart, and let's copy and paste this section. This is new route. Okay, and if I go to new route, you can see I get my new route.dart. I'm sending a request to new route, and I will give this response. You can easily add your route with Dart frog CLI.frog new route, and I want to call, for example, hello. This is another route, and you can see hello.dart is run and it's create in my routes, and it's added on request function for me, and I can add my response in here, hello. And we know that in here in my terminal, if I go to this terminal, I have application reload, I have actually hot reload, and if I save this file, I'm reloading my application, and if I go to hello, you can see hello. Very nice. If you see my Flutter full course or Dart full course, you know that we can send requests, for example, with HTTP package to our server. And in here with Dart frog, we are creating a server that means we can send some requests. For example, in here in my browser, I'm sending GET request. In browser, we are sending GET request and we give some response. All right. But in here, I don't want to talk about Flutter, and actually we are only have server side, but we know that we have an application called Postman that's help us to test our server and send some requests. This is a client's side. You can imagine this application help us to bring a client. And in here, we have a new, it's easy to install. I don't want to explain Postman a lot. In here, you can see we have a new and we have some protocol. Maybe in future, I will talk about GraphQL or gRCP, but we know that in here, we are talking about HTTP protocol that have some method. For example, in here, you can choose get method, post method, put, patch, delete, or anything you want. But let's test our server and this route to see our results in here and how I can do this. Let's start our server again. Dart frog dev. We are in localhost, and if I type my local host in here, localhost 8080, and I wanna go to hello, let's send, and you can see I get my response in here. We are in get request, but if I change it to post request, we actually get our hello. And why? Because in here, in hello route, we didn't actually filter our requests. For example, in here, I can check something. If context dot request dot method, in here we have a method. It's equals to HTTP method dot get. I want to return this and hello, this is get method. Let's wrap it with curly braces, and in here, if I want to return something, this is not get method. All right. And in here, if I send my get request with get method, in here you can see, hello, this is get method. But if I change it to post or put, you will see in here, hello, this is not get method. And actually, in most of the case, we use get, post, put, and delete. That's called CRUD. C for creating, R for reading. That means in most of the time we use get because we want to get something. We want to send a request and get, for example, list of user. For example, list of course. U for update, and in most of the time we use put for updating data. For example, we want to update user information. For example, user want to change name, and we have some routes. For example, user ID. For example, in here we have a ID of user, and in body we can send some parameter. For example, name equals Mahdi. Last name, for example, equals Mirzadeh. And when we want to change it, we can use put method. And D for deleting, for example, if user want to delete account, we send the ID and we delete the user. These are called CRUD. When we're sending a request, we see that we have a request, we have a response, and each request and each response has a body and header. For example, in here you can see my body of, let's change it to get. My body of this request is none. We don't have any body. We are only calling this route. And the body of response is hello. This is not, let's send again, route not found. Okay, because we don't have any user ID. Let's change it to hello. Hello, this is get method. This is body of my response. And I can add some headers. These are default headers that Postman added. I can send my headers, for example, when we have authentication, if I add auth type in here, we have authorization in here. For example, each user has a token, and send a token to a header. And each response actually has header. You can see these are our header in response. And how I can read headers in here, like, let's close these, like context request method, we have another context request header. I have header, and I can read this header. This header is a map because header is key value. And when I wanna send a response, I have a body, I send my body, and I can actually send header for that. In here, you can see header is map. All right, let's create some routes that's meaningful. I want to close my new and hello route, delete, yes, and in another terminal, I want to create another route. Okay, in first state, let's imagine we want to work for user, and let's create CRUD for user. Dart frog, new route. I add my route in sub route I called user, and let's add user. But I don't want to have this user. I want to create another folder, and in this folder I want to add my user stuff things. I want to remove these, and for creating a folder, subfolder, add these and add index.dart. I'm sorry, I need to remove these, and yeah, you can see I have user and index. In here, for default things, first of all, I want to create getting list of user, for example. All right. In here, I want to create a function to return for us a list of user. For example, 2 user. For testing, I want to add 2 user. All right. In here, get users, and this get users return a response. That means we want to add a response for that. And this response has some body. I want to add a list of user. That means I need an array. But if you see this, I need to pass a string. But we know that we have a JSON format. And in most of the time, we use JSON format for HTTP APIs. And in Dart Frog, for sending response as a JSON, you have a factory called JSON. And in here, you can see for body, I have an object. Let's add array in here and see what happened. For example, I know that each user has, I don't know, name, Mahdi. Let's add single quote to get rid of this error. And I have a last name, Mirzadeh. And let's copy and paste again because we needed 2 user, name, I don't know, John Smith. I'm sorry, Smith. Yeah, we have this. And for returning response, we know that in Dart 3, we have a very beautiful syntax for switch. Let's return a switch. That switch, it's need to get context dot request dot method. If you like to talk about, I have a full course Dart, but I decide to create some small videos, about some advanced Dart things. If you like it, please comment below and let me know if you like. All right, and in here, we can check, for example, if my HTTP method equals to get, let's return get users, but in default case, in this syntax, we need to use underscore, return a response for default. I add a body. This is default. All right. And in here, if my method is get, I wanna return list of users, but if we wanna create CRUD, in here I am creating a read section because I wanna read list of users, and we don't implement other stuff. And in here, let's only check get users. All right. For checking this, I need to go to user and let's check what happened. And you can see I have a JSON format, list, name Mahdi, last name Mirzadeh, name John, last name Smith, because I used response.json, and response.json handle encoding and decoding for us, handle encoding for us. All right. But if I, for example, want to add another user, you can see this is default user. We don't have implement this. And let's implement creating user. For creating user, let's add create user. We know that for creating user, we need to store user information somewhere. And in most of the case, we have a database, and we need to store user information in our database and save user information. But for now, we don't have any database, but I will create database. In here, I need to get this context because I need to read user input body. Request context, and let's add it in here. If HTTP method.post add what's called create user, and add my context in here, but it's need to have a response. And you can see. All right. In here, I want to create a user. I need to read, for example, in here, for if user want to send user information, in here, let's expand this. You can see I have body, and user need to add user information. In here, I have none, but we can use form data, but I'm recommending to use raw and JSON. For example, in here, name Mahdi, last name Mirzadeh. All right, this is my body. I want to store name and last name in a database, and I need to read this information in my server. How I can read this? It's very easy. I have a final JSON. I need to read JSON body context dot request dot body dot JSON. I need to read JSON. All right. And this JSON is a feature of dynamic. Okay, let's wrap it and async. I need to wait for that, and for that I need to have a future of response in here async. All right. Wait, I'm sorry. And we need to wait for reading JSON, and after that, as map of a string dynamic. In here, I have my JSON in here, and after that, I can read my information. For example, final name equals JSON. We know that name. The key is name and last name. And again, I have last name, and yeah, we read this information. And I wanna send a message to user. For example, I can add return response JSON, because these are JSON response. And let's add a body. And in this body, I want to add a message for user. Saved. And let's add user information again in here. I have name equals name and last name equals last name. Very nice. But we have some error. And why? Because in here, we are returning future of response, not response. For preventing this error, I need to convert response to future of response. And in here, I need to add async. And in here, for default, I need to add future.value and pass this. And in here, I have to add future. All right. I have to change this future value. All right. It's fixed. But I have some error, I think. Yeah, come on. All right. Let's check again. In here, for getting user, we check its work. And for posting, you can see saved username. If I can change it, for example, John, you can see my response is changed, but actually we didn't save yet, but we need to add some code between these two sections. Let's add to do. Insert user information to database. It needs to be, I think my style is wrong, but it's okay. And yeah, we can easily read and write user. But we know that we can add a put, but for better styling, for better creating our API, it's better for deleting and updating user. You can see, for example, user send ID in parameter of URL, and after that we can put or delete user information. We can add all of CRUD items in here because, and we can actually remove ID. But if user want to delete account, for example, a user can add, for example, I don't know, ID of user. User can send in this way, like post. But for better styling and for better and beautiful syntax, it's better to create this syntax and remove body, and it's very easy to delete. And for put, we have exactly this, but with body. That means I want to change my name to Mahdi 2, for example. All right. For creating dynamic routes, these are dynamic routes. This ID is not static. User always is user. User always is a static route. But in here, maybe ID is 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, and this item is dynamic. In here, for creating these routes, we have another concept in Dart Frog new route. We know that in user, but this is not index. We use this syntax, and this is ID. When you use these characters, that means I want to create a dynamic routes. All right. When you create something like this, you can see in here, I have another things in here. In here, you can see I have only context, but in here I have extra value in my requests. All right, in here, we want to create delete and update user. I want to copy pasting these sections. All right. And if request is delete or request is put, delete user, but we know that we don't need this context. We need this ID. And for update user, we have ID and context. We read user ID from here, and we read user JSON body updated value from here. All right. And let's create these items. In here, I have delete. I know that I need future response, delete user. This needs a string of ID. And let's convert this to future response async. And I have another things. This is create. This is update user. And let's get request context. And yeah, we need to add a to-do because we need to read ID from here and remove user from database. But for now, let's return a response as a JSON. This needs to be async. And in here, I can easily add a body, and let's add a message. User with ID, $ID, I want to add mention ID is deleted. All right. I add this. I'm sorry. Let's add some format. Yeah, it's very good. And for updating user, let's add async in here and return response.json. I'm sorry, JSON. For body, I want to add, let's add some message, for example. Let's add message. User is updated. And all right. And in here, if I go to this and change it to delete, I don't have anybody. And if I send this, you can see user with ID 3 is deleted. But if I change it, for example, to 10 or whatever I want, you can see. Or hello. User with ID hello is deleted. All right. And if I change it to put, we know that in this case, this function is run. And actually, we add our body in here. Last name. This is Mirzadeh 2, for example. All right. User is updated, but it's better to show user information in here. But for now, it's okay. All right. Let's check what happened in these two files. We create CRUD functionality, CRUD method, and CRUD functions to our server. In here, we use user, we add user route, and these two file handling in index for default. We are handling get and post. You can see in here we read we return response, and these are DOM user. And in here you can see in here for creating user we need add this information to database. And in here we know that when we have this file name, that means we have dynamic routes. Dynamic routes, that means in routes, maybe the parameter is changed. In here, user always is user, but in here, hello, it's not always hello. Maybe we have one, maybe we have two. And in here, when you create and when you use Dartfrog CLI to creating routes, Dartfrog handle for you and add your dynamic section in here, and you can use it, for example, deleting user with ID, update user with ID, and context, because context contains user updated information. Let's go forward and add actually a database to our project. If you see my Flutter course, you will see I use MySQL database, and I get some messages because some of you can't configure database. And in this course, I have a practice for you, and I wanna change my code. I wanna use ORM that's help us to create our database, and very easily with less bugs we can create our database. But let's explain you. You can see in here we have MySQL package that you can use it in your Dart project. For example, in our Dartfrog, you can create your connection. You can install MySQL in your local host, or in future when you have a server and you want to deploy this project, you can install MySQL, or we can use Docker. I will show you one example of Docker and explain you simple things about Docker, but I'm not expert in Docker because it's very huge concept. But in here you can use this package and connect to your, for example, local database and add some query. You need to know some SQL knowledge, but when you use ORM that I will show you, you don't need any SQL things. And here you can see I can, for example, if I show you insert, for example, if I want to add a user, I need to add something like this: insert my username, email, age, for example, to my database, and after that I have a user in my database. But I don't want to use this. I want to use Prisma and MySQL. All right. In here, you can see ORM that use Prisma, and Prisma is an ORM that's it's very common use, I think, in JavaScript. If I show you in here, yes, let's Prisma. You can see Prisma is in here. You can see Prisma. It's for Node.js and TypeScript, but we are in Dart. And in here, we can use, with this package, we can use Prisma for our Dart project. In here, you can see Prisma for Dart is next generation ORM for Dart and Flutter. And with Prisma, it's something like interface that we don't need to know about PostgreSQL or MySQL. In this video, we want to use MySQL. It doesn't matter MySQL. It doesn't matter you know MySQL or not. We only want to connect with our Prisma, and this Prisma is figured out how to query to MySQL and generate all of this for us. We only need to, for example, if I bring you in here, this is a documentation for Prisma for Dart. You can see in here, if I show you example, in here we don't need to use something like this. We don't need to know about SQL. We only need to say to Prisma, hey Prisma, from user table, because maybe we have another table, for example our course, or I don't know, everything we want. Prisma, I need the user table and I want to create another user. You can see all of this concept is Dart, not SQL. Create user, create input class, and the name is Alice, email is alice@prisma.pub, and after that Prisma figured out how query needs, for example in PostgreSQL or MySQL or every things that's mentioned in here, SQLite, MongoDB, or SQL Server. Let's go to the documentation, and in get started, in here we need to install Prisma. And Prisma CLI, it's for Node.js. And with Node.js, we have npm package installer. You need to install Node.js. In this link, you can see Node.js. And with npm i Prisma, you will install Prisma. For example, in here, if I run this npm I Prisma, but until now this package has a one problem, and it's not compatible with Prisma version 5. Let's show you the versioning in here. Prisma versions, you can see in here, if I go to release, in here we have 5. We have to use a version lower than 5, and for that I use version 4. And for doing this, you have to add your version. npm install Prisma at version, for example, I use 4.16.2. You use this version, all right? And after that, you will see npm package manager is go to downloading this version of Prisma. And you can see I have my Prisma in here. Very nice. And after that, all right, until now, we need to install Prisma, but not latest version, we need version 4. And after that, we need initialize Prisma in our project. All right, npx Prisma init. After you init your Prisma, you will see we have some folder in here. One of them is node modules. It doesn't matter. And we have another folder, Prisma and schema Prisma. In here, everything happened in here. All right, I will show you. And another things, we have .env. All right. When you init your project, you will see .env, and in here, in database URL, we are initializing our connections to database. If you see MySQL, you will see we need some settings to connect to our database. Each database has a route, for example, localhost has a port, we have a user and password and database name. And you can see all of these items is in here. This is PostgreSQL, but we need MySQL. We need to change it to MySQL. In here we have user. For example, in this course, I have a root user. And the password, for example, in here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is my root password. I bring this, and localhost and the port. The port of MySQL for default is this. I copy this and paste it in here. And for example, you can use your database name. In here, I use MyDB for default. And you can see everything that we will see in here, we have this in here. And Prisma use this .env. In .env, in most of project, in backend, I'm not expert in backend things, but we are using Dart and we are trying to figure it out. In .env, we are define our environment variable. For example, database URL, this is useful for Prisma to understand how and in which database Prisma need to connect. All right, we change our .env, and you can see in here, this is, for example, PostgreSQL. Very nice. And after that, we have schema.prisma. In this schema, we are creating our configuration. For example, let's go to .schema. Yeah, in here, we have generator. This generator, that means, for example, in here, this is using PrismaClient JS. But we know that our provider is not JS, it's Dart. I will show you, we need to change this. But our provider is not Postgres, this is MySQL. And if you have some problem with schema, you can see in here, I use extensions, Prisma. You can install Prisma extensions, and this is very helpful. It gives you, for example, if I type wrong, you can see because I am using Prisma extensions, it says you can't use MySQL, it's okay. And the database URL, we know that Prisma schema.prisma, it's known about .env. When we use env database URLs, that means for connecting to this MySQL, go to .env, that means in here, and use database URL to figure it out how you can connect to your database. All right, but we need to change this provider because we are not in JavaScript, we are in Dart. And in here, you can see, we have to add this package, but we need to change our provider to Dart run ORM. When you want to generate and configure your Dart code, you don't need to run JS. You need to Dart run ORM, and with this package convert all of our configuration, all of our schema to Dart code. All right, and after that, let's add it in. Let's use this copy and add it in my project .pub at ORM, and you know that in my pub/spec YAML, I have my ORM in here. Very nice. But in here we have generator because we need to tell to Prisma how generate Dart code. And for that we use ORM package. We have database. And after that, we can create our tables, for example. For example, in here, we know that we are working with user. And in here you can see we can create our model. That means each model we are creating in here in MySQL, each model convert to a table. All right. And let's create a model in here. Model. We know that we have user, and each user has a name and has a name and last name, but let's add ID for each user. ID, this is an integer, and let's add these two items. That means this is ID and default is auto increment. That means we don't have to add ID. Default, this is ID and sign default, auto increments. That means when I'm adding a new user, you increase and add ID for that. For example, if I add a user, I don't have to add ID. I only add name and last name, and ID is automatically generated and incremented. Okay, we have our user. Very nice, very nice. After that, when we create this, we have to push our model to database. We are creating a model, but MySQL, it doesn't know about this user. We need to push this user to our database. And for doing this, I have to run this command, npx prisma dbpush. But we get error. Why? Because I don't have any local host in this port. I don't have any database. Because I don't have any MySQL in my local machine. Prisma understand, okay, let's get variables from .env, let's use this schema in schema.prisma, and okay, let's connect to MySQL, but we don't have any MySQL in my machine. Okay, let's install MySQL. For downloading MySQL, this is a website for MySQL. You can choose your operating system. This is a Windows installer. For installing, for example, in macOS, you need to run a command. For example, let's check MySQL macOS. And yeah, you have some options in here you can download, but I want to use Docker image. And what's Docker? I'm not expert in Docker, but in this course, I want to talk about Docker a little. Docker brings you isolate space. For example, you can consider this is a virtual machine. And in this virtual machine, you can install everything you want. For example, you can pull this MySQL with Docker with this command. It's easily to install. You need first you need to install Docker, and after that, for example, you can install each image you want, and you can easily add your image. For example, we can build our project. In here, we are creating a project and create a Docker file, and after that, create our image. When everybody wanna use our project, other people don't need to install Dart, or after that install Prisma, install MySQL, or each dependency we have. Other users do not need to do this. They are easily install it with Docker and easily launch our image, and everything is happened. For example, Docker will be installed, MySQL will be installed, and everything is installed, and easily with one command, our project and our application is built. But I want to create and I want to use MySQL with Docker. And let's bring Docker client in Mac. You can see this is my Docker engine. It's need to be up, it's starting, and in here I don't have any image, but I need to add MySQL image in my Docker engine. And we know that easily I can copy this and I can install. All right, you can see in here I have Docker is pulled, and in here, yeah, I have my image and we can easily run it. But I don't want to run simplify with this. I want to run it in my with command line because I want to add some tag. For example, Docker, you can see we can starting our MySQL with this, but MySQL is start in Docker, not in our local machine. Okay, let's start it. Docker run. We can add a name for that. For example, I can easily use MySQL, it doesn't matter. And -e. -e, that means I want to add environment variable. It's need to be this because I want to define MySQL root password. You can choose everything you want, but we know that we use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. I use this because if you see my .env, I use this password, and if I change it to another password, Prisma can't connect and can't use MySQL. All right? And I use, yeah. And after that, I want to add another command in here, -p, and this is for port config. Because if you don't pass this port config, for example, we know that for default and for MySQL, the port is, I didn't remember, 3306. This is our port, But if we don't pass this, let's bring it in here, add in, all right. If we don't pass port config, this port is run and it's our MySQL is running in our Docker. But we want to forward this port in my local machine port, all right? Because we want to use MySQL in our local machine, and after that -d MySQL. And you can see MySQL is run. If I bring Docker, you can see this is in use. And if I click that, you can see my MySQL is running. And if I click this, you can see I can easily access to my MySQL, and I can use MySQL-u with user root -p password. I will 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you can see I'm in my Docker, I am in MySQL. But in here, if I type MySQL, MySQL doesn't understand for my local machine. But MySQL is known for this Docker, and this is isolated to this section. But we know that we are adding this port, and if my Prisma want to connect to localhost this port, it can see MySQL. All right, in here, very nice. And let's run our terminal db push and see what happened. You can see we don't have any error because we are using this port, and we are add this port to our local machine, and Prisma can see our database, and it's work very nice. And you can see I can use show database. I'm sorry, show databases. You can see in here we have MyDB because Prisma create this database. And if I select, these are query, these are SQL language code. It doesn't matter. I want to show you what's happened. Select MyDB. I'm sorry, use MyDB. Okay, select show tables. Yeah, you can see in here I have user. I have user in my MyDB. And why I have this user? Because Prisma convert our model to MySQL DB. All right, and why we need this? We need build runner because we know that when we are creating our user model, and after that we push our user model to MySQL table, we need to create a class and config for our Dart language. Because currently, if I want to use Prisma, it doesn't create any user class for us. This is modeled for Prisma, but how I can access user from my Dart code. In here, we use build runner to generate. Build runner is a code generator, is a package that helps us to generate a code. And this is a very public package. You can, for example, in future I will video about that. You can create your package that depend build runner, and with build runner you can generate some code. For example, in this video I will show you JSON serializable, and we can easily create our class and JSON serializable with build runner generate our, for example, to JSON or from JSON for us. Okay, and because of that we need these 3 items. dart pop at build runner because we want to have generator with build runner. Prisma can generate classes that we need, for example, to handling user. And after that, JSON serializable. These two dependencies are dev dependencies, and for that we use -d, but JSON annotation is dependency. All right. We are creating our code, and in here, let's generate again npx Prisma. All right, and after that, when we generate this, we can use dart run build runner build to generate everything that's needed. For example, in here, Prisma, and why we add JSON serializable? Because Prisma need to handle to JSON and from JSON for example, user model. You will see this. You can see build runner is building, and all right. After this is done, you can see in here, I have another folder called lib, and in here, I have lib source and generate. In here, you can see all of these files, PrismaClient and PrismaClient.g.dart. These are generated code that Prisma with build runner create for us. And you can see in here, for example, in here I have a user. If I show you our user class, where is user? User, okay, in here you can see I have a class user, and Prisma with build runner generate these for us, has ID, name, and last name, and implement JSON serializable. And JSON serializable, we know that it's defined from JSON to JSON for us without any boilerplate code. And yeah, very, very nice. And it's ready to go, and we can use our Prisma. All right, let's create a user, and let's go to this item and fix this to-do. We know that we need a final Prisma. This is equals PrismaClient, and PrismaClient we need a data source, and data source is database. Okay, Prisma need to know .env items, but it's not good to hardcode this section. I will show you how we can improve this, but for now, let's copy and paste this string in here. I will change it because it's not very good to hardcode something like this connections to your code. We add our Prisma, and in here, I want to add another user. How can I do this? Prisma user. This user is generated with build runner, and Prisma with build runner create these. And I can, for example, create, because we want to add another user. And the data is user create input class. User create input class. The name is name. Oh, because this is a string, as a string. Let's get it as a string to solve this problem, but it's maybe nullable because maybe user didn't pass the name, and we need to check. For example, let's add a if name or last name. I want to return a response error. For example, response.json. For body, I want to add message, add name and last name. And after that, if user didn't fill these items, name or last name, we show this error, and we can actually add status code. What is status code? Status code, for example, for default status code is 200, and that means your request is successful. But in here we have error, and we can add HTTP status. It's not accepted. Accepted, yeah, 202. When a status code is start with 2, these are success messages. But in here we have a bad requests. Bad request start with 4, and that means user, it's problem about user, and user has a mistake. All right, it's good. I will show you what happens if we don't pass name or last name. In here, if I create a user, this is user fluent. User fluent is implemented feature. That means we need to await to get a user, and after that in here I have user, and this user is a class user. That's Prisma generate this, and I can easily add this user in here. Very nice. And let's test it and see what happened. Yeah, okay. In my terminal, in my server, let's terminate and run again. All right, very nice. Let's bring our, okay, we have some problem in here, I think. Why? Okay, because Dart HTML is imported through package. It's very unavailable. Okay, let's remove these, because I think we need to import from Dart.io. Okay, because we are importing Dart HTML, we get error. We need to import HTTP status from Dart.io, and after that, I think our problem is fixed. Yeah, this is okay. And in here, if I okay, post, we don't have any ID in here. I want to remove last name, and I only add name. And if I send this message, you can see add name and last name, and we get 400 status code. This is bad request, but let's add our last name, Mirzadeh. Okay, and let's run again. It says saved. Very nice. Actually, let's bring our Docker, go to MySQL in terminal. You can see in here, if I run select all from user, empty set, but let's again select all from user. And you can see we have Mirzadeh in here, and without any SQL language code, actually we can create with MySQL or actually not every, each database that's Prisma client support. And in here we can easily connect to our Prisma, and after that we can, for example, we can let's add another concept in here. Let's copy and paste again. These are very bad code, and we will fix it. Don't worry. Okay, in here I have create. Let's fix this. I add another Prisma client in here, and in here I want to get all of my user. Prisma.user. Let's find many. Yeah, with find many, you can see I can get all of users. But maybe we have tons, we have a very thousand of user, but we can in here add, take and skip and lazy loading our users. But let's create all of them, await final users. This is iterable of the list of users, and let's wrap it and convert it to list, and it's need to be async. All right, in here we have a list of users, and it's very easily, yeah, users. Let's see what happened. I can run my Postman in here, and get request, you can see I have my users. If I add another user in post, for example, John Smith, and change it to get, I'm sorry, change it to post, send request, it's saved, change it to get, send, and you can see I can easily create and get users from MySQL with Prisma ORM. Very nice. All right, I want to talk about another concept in Dart Frog that's called middleware. With middleware, we can run some code for each request. That means, for example, in here, I have a request for user for a get and post. I have delete and put. And we can, for example, add middleware for user folder or add middleware for all of our routes. And how we can run and create a middleware. If I go to Dart Frog in middleware, you can see with middleware, we can execute a code before and after request. In here, you can see we have a middleware, and each middleware, you can see. In here, our requests are happened. Before we handled our request, we can do something. For example, inject, I will show you dependency injection. We can inject our Prisma, and after that, we can do something. For example, we can add body, or we will see that, okay? But we have a command, Dart Frog new middleware, and we can add a middleware, for example, for hello subroute. But I want to add a middleware for all of our routes. In here, you can see Dart Frog new middleware, and I have a middleware. These are start with underscore middleware, and if I create a middleware for user, you can see exactly this name is repeat for user. And in here, this middleware is only for all files that's in user, but for user, we don't have any middleware. I can remove it. Okay, in this middleware, you can see the handler is a feature or response. Okay, that's a function that we have access to context, and we can do something. For example, let's return a handler, and in here, we need to return handler with this context, but before each request, we want to handle something. For example, I want to log dummy things. For example, this is request. Okay, save this. And if I send a request, you can see this is a request. Another request. Before each request is running, this text is print. But I can await for this async and store. Okay, and return response. Okay, in here I want to before print after. Okay, and you can see in here, if I send request, you can see before after, because before I get a response, this is run. After we await for receiving response, I can print after. Okay, but what's the purpose of using middleware? One of the purpose is, for example, we can using request logger. For example, in here, I can return handler, okay, but we have a use method or use function that's get another handler. You can see in here we can add another middleware. For example, request logger. If I save, send again, you can see in here I have request logger, and in here we can see the log. For example, get user is with 200 status code is run, okay? And after that, I can add another use handler, okay? And one of them is my Prisma. What's that means? That means you can see in my user index, I have my Prisma client. I want to cut this Prisma section and bring it in my middleware. And this is one, I want to put it Prisma as a private. And after that, I want to inject my Prisma to my middleware. And in here, we have a concept called dependency injection. Actually, we can use a provider. With provider, you can see provider, we can inject everything we want. Let's test something. For example, in here, you can see, let's return a text. Hello, this is injected. Okay? I'm injecting this string to my requests. And that means each request can access to this, each request, for example, if I put this middleware in user, each request in this route can access to this. But I added public in all of my routes. And in here, each request can access to this because I'm providing my text and injected this text with provider. With provider, we actually the provider is a middleware, and we are using, you can see the request logger is a middleware, okay? And provider is actually a middleware that provides something for us. For example, I am providing a string that's called hello, this is injected, okay? And this is a provider of type string. Okay, and let's test this provider middleware in my index. Let's get rid of this error. I will cut this, but in here, I am sending in this request, in get request, let's add it on. I have my list of users, but I want to add my injected string. I can read with this code. Context. I don't have access to context. Let's add a context to that. Build context. Context. I'm sorry, request context. Okay. And add context in here. And after that, I have context.read. With this, I can access to my final injected text, okay? And you can see this is and you can see in here, this is a string injected text, but for body, I want to add injected text, okay? Let's see, and you can see, hello, this is injected. I can read my injected things. And I want to inject my Prisma client. Okay, let's remove this, cut this, and cut Prisma from here. Okay, and in my middleware, I want to inject this Prisma here, Prisma. But Prisma isn't a string because we need a Prisma client. And in here, I have my Prisma in each request. And let's fix this error. How I can provide this Prisma? We know that with context.read PrismaClient final Prisma. And let's copy this. And in my, in here, I have my Prisma. Okay, let's rerun again our server. And oh my God, I think I have some error, but I don't know. No, okay. Yeah, it's working. And you know that when I'm stopping my server, my data doesn't lost because I'm saving in a database. Very nice. All right. And in here, we understand middleware and provider. And for example, in here, I can create a middleware. In here, I can add middleware, provide DB, and provide DB, it's run this, return provider Prisma, and I can easily use my provide DB. It's very beautiful and it's very clean, and you can see it's very, very readable and very nice. And let's cut this, bring it in here, for example. Yeah, I think it's good. Okay. All right. Another thing that I want to mention in here, if you see my routes, for example, in here, I am doing all stuff in here. I want to separate my code. For example, I want to separate this section, reading user items, and all the concept in here. I want to bring all of them, all of actions depend on user and actions that depend on database of user. I want to bring all of them to a user repository class. In here, I can create a file I called user repository .dart. This is a class user repository, and we know that user repository need access to Prisma. And for doing this, I want to create a final Prisma client I called DB, and I want to add a constructor for that. All right. And in here, I want to add my code to creating a user in here. That means we know that we have a future. We want to return a user model. It could be null, create user. And for now, each user has a string name and required string last name. We will change this. It's for testing because each user, I want to add username and password, but it's okay for now. And I can await async await for db.user and .create user create input. This is my name and last name, and yeah, final user. And you can see in here I have a user. Let's return user in here, and it's very, very easily for us because in here I can easily remove this and easily we only know about user repository. That means routes doesn't know about Prisma. I will show you user repository, but I need DB. I don't want to add it with this way. I want to inject my user repository in my middleware. That means with this item, each route, it doesn't matter what's DB. For example, if I want to change my DB, routes doesn't change, okay? And with this, I can context read. I need user repository, and very nice, okay? But this isn't a user dot create user, okay? It's very better to change this, for example, final repo equals this and repo. It's very better to separate these, and this is user. This is future of user. I'm sorry, this needs to be await. And this is user. Okay. One more thing. We didn't provide our user repository. Let's go to the middleware, and in here I want to add another middleware. Provide. Okay, user repo, and return a provider that's user repository. But where is my DB? We know that. In here we have our Prisma. And I can easily add another use, and I can add it in here. Provide user repo. It's very, very obvious and clear. Very nice. And in here, for example, in here I can remove my Prisma, but for getting user we get some error. It doesn't matter. This is my user repo, and I call it repo. And repo need to has a function to getting all of my users. Okay, I call repo.getAll, and it's await and get users. And for that, we don't know. It's very better, and it's very separate way to each row only need to access to repository. Okay, in here let's add a future of list of users, get all, and in here I only need to await db dot user dot find many async and final list and return list dot toList. Okay, and we don't have any error. Okay, in my index I only need about user repository, not Prisma. Okay, and it's very clean. We inject our PrismaClient and our repository, and with this way, when I'm doing this, I can actually remove my provide DB, because I don't need providing my database to requests, because I'm providing my database for repositories. Okay, I can easily remove this and everything works. You can see in here, I can get my users, or I can add my users. For example, in here, name John 2, Smith 2, okay, send. I can get my users, and yeah, it's work. And my routes doesn't access to Prisma because I'm providing my Prisma for repositories. For example, if I have another repository, for example, for course or for another routes, I can only, because only repository needs database, not routes. And another thing that I want to mention in here is I said this is not good to add these hard-coded things. We are using root username and password. And for doing this, we have a concept that we can define our environment. For example, we can use actually environment variable. If I cut this, I have a platform dot environment, and in here I can access to something that's we declare in a minute. In here, for example, I can add db database URL, and we want to define these before we starting, for example, in here we are in development environment, and for that I can easily define this database URL equals without a space, and after that dart frog dev. I'm serving my development environment and development server, and after that I can easily access with this code platform environment. I can easily add another environment. After that, if I check this, you can see in here I can easily work with my database, and it's work. We don't have any problem, and very nice. All right, in this video we learn about Dart Frog, and we learn about how we can create routes, how we can create middlewares, how we can inject our dependency. For example, in here we use database config with Prisma and inject it to our user repository, and we inject user repository to our requests. In future, we will check how we can authorize user, and step by step we can easily create our full stack Dart project. Very nice. Okay, thank you for watching this video. In the next video, we will create and using authorization, how we can authorize user. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.